So as we're closing out the 9th chapter of Ketubot, we've been investigating questions about oaths and swearing and why you might need to swear an oath. And we're actually going to finish the 9th chapter with questions about where documents are lost. And we'll indeed close out these issues with questions around the death of the husband. And with this question of the death of the husband actually provides the link to the 10th chapter. So we'll see how the end of the 9th chapter and the beginning of the 10th chapter are linked. But the question begins with missing documents. Hotzia get ve'ein imo ketubah. She produces a get, but without a ketubah. So we know she's divorced. She's got her get. She doesn't have a ketubah. Not clear why she doesn't have a ketubah. Maybe she's lost it. Maybe, well, we've already learned that there are some parts of the land of Israel where they didn't write a ketubah, where the court enforced certain conditions. And of course, we know, by the way, that there's a minimum amount of money on the ketubah anyway. Even if it's not written, she has 200 zuz if she's a virgin, or 100 zuz if she's a widow. We know that exists. And so we're not surprised when the Mishnah rules for the woman who's got a get, she's got a bill of divorce, but she doesn't have a ketubah. She doesn't have a ketubah, gova ketubata. She collects her ketubah. And the Talmud confirms that actually she collects the minimum amount of the ketubah. In other words, anything additional is lost. But the minimum amount of the ketubah is guaranteed by the court. So she doesn't need a document. She can collect just with the get. What about the other way around? Ketubah ve'ein get. So she's got a ketubah. She doesn't have a get. And he omer avad kiti. She says, "Oh, my get was lost." Vehu omer avad shovri. He says, "My receipt was lost." In other words, he's claiming that he did pay her. He did pay her, but he's lost the receipt. And similarly, a creditor, just an ordinary creditor who produces a document, shtar chov, this is actually a loan document. It's translation by me actually on the sort sheet as document, but it's a loan document. Similarly, a creditor who produces a loan document, but any more prosbul, he doesn't have a prosbul. A prosbul is a document that allows him to roll the loan over the sabbatical year, because debts are cancelled in the 7th year. So without the prosbul, he can't collect it if it passes over the 7th year, and he's lost his prosbul, or he can't produce it. So here the Mishnah rules they are not paid out. And the principle here seems to be that if you're seeking to reclaim a debt, you have to prove that the debt is valid. And it applies equally to a creditor or to a woman who's seeking to recover her ketubah. And if she doesn't have the necessary evidence, and he says, "Well, I paid you out, but the receipt was lost," well, you could say it's evenly balanced. But if she can't bring additional evidence or witnesses or whatever, she can't get her ketubah, just as much as he can't collect his debt. And Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel is going to disagree with Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Omer. Now this is Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, so this must be Rabban Gamliel, his father, must be Rabban Gamliel of Yavne. So this is going to be the son of Rabban Gamliel of Yavne. So he's living around the time of the Bar Kokhba revolt, or just after it. And he declares, Min hasakana ve'elach, from the time of danger and thereon. So he's talking about sort of the time of the Bar Kokhba revolt and onwards. Min hasakana ve'elach, isha govat tubata shelo v'geit. from the time of danger, a woman could collect her ketubah without a get. Uval chov gover shelo bi prosbul. And a creditor can collect without a prosbul. And we get some insight now into the chaos and social breakdown of Jewish society after the Bar Kokhba revolt. The land of Israel was really devastated. The devastation after the revolt was much greater than the devastation after year 70. The land was really destroyed by the Romans. So, and perhaps it's that people didn't have a prosbul or a get, or perhaps, and the commentator suggests this, people were afraid to keep the document of a prosbul or a debt, because Romans would kill people who were seen to be keeping Jewish religion, and holding those kind of documents in your possession was evidence that you were keeping to the Jewish religion. And if the Romans found you with those documents, they'd kill you. So people would not hold those documents. And so the halacha allowed a woman to collect without a get and a creditor to collect without a prosbul. What about different combinations? Shnei gitin u'shtei ketubot. So she's got 2 gitin, 2 bills of divorce, u'shtei ketubot, and she's got 2 ketubot. This is a lucky woman. It seems that this, by the way, this refers to the same man. So it feels as if she married him, and then they divorced, and then they remarried. You can remarry, providing there's no one else in between. You can remarry after divorce. So they remarried, but then they re-divorced. So she's got 2 gets and 2 ketubot. And it feels as though there is an intention on the part of the husband to write these 2 ketubot, because they're separate documents, separate marriages. And the Mishnah rules, she's got these 2 pairs of documents, 2 perfectly kosher pairs of documents. She collects shtei ketubot. She collects both her ketubot. It's no problem. But the other combinations, the missing combinations, seem to be problematic. And it's not quite clear why. We've seen before that very often, if it's possible to do so, the Mishnah will interpret the writing of a husband minimally. So he can write such and such X, and the Mishnah will interpret X, but no further. And we read shtei ketubot v'get echad. So she's got 2 ketubot. She's only got 1 get. Or ketubah u'shnei gitin. Maybe she's got 1 ketubah and 2 bills of divorce. Or ketubah v'get u'mitah. Maybe she's got a ketubah and a get, and we've got evidence of death. So we know there's a death. In all these situations, she seems to just get 1 ketubah. And the Mishnah actually gives a reason. Because someone who divorces his wife and then remarries her, he contracts his second marriage on the condition of the first ketubah. So we seem to be saying that unless she's holding a full document set, 2 ketubot, 2 gittin, we assume, even with remarriage, that he only really intended, when he brought her back, he only really intended to rely on the first ketubah. In other words, he didn't intend to give her any more money on a second divorce, and she's already planning to get on the first divorce. That seems to be the reasoning of the Mishnah. Katan she hisio aviv. What about a minor whose father gave him away in marriage? Now this is really interesting, because the minor doesn't have legal capacity to take on a debt. So the ketubah can't be valid. Can't be valid. He doesn't have capacity. He's got no legal capacity. Katan she hisio aviv ketubata kayemet. But the Mishnah rules, a minor whose father's given him in marriage, the ketubah is valid. The ketubah stands somehow, even though he didn't have capacity. Shel manat ken kima, because it's on this condition he kept her. The Mishnah seems to be saying, look, okay, he was a minor. He was a minor when he married her, but he kept he didn't stop the marriage after he reached the age of majority. They stayed being married. So every day that they stay being married after the age of majority is kind of evidence that, okay, he intends to stand by the language in the ketubah. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stayed married. Ger, nit gayer v'ishto imo. What about a convert who converted with his wife? Feels as though feels like they already had a ketubah, even though they weren't Jewish. This is really interesting social commentary. They had a ketubah, even though they weren't Jewish. Ketubah kayemet, but the ketubah is valid. She'almanat kain kima, because he, the convert, stayed married to her after the conversion, almanat ken, on that basis. In other words, he stayed married to her on that basis. So we assume that he's implicitly affirmed the validity of the ketubah, even though he didn't have I'm more assuming really that as pre-conversion, he didn't have full legal capacity to agree to it under Jewish law. But somehow, by the fact that he stayed married to her after the conversion, we assume that he's implicitly agreed. And that is the end of the 9th chapter. The ketubah stands, even if it was a ketubah that originates from outside Judaism, it still stands after conversion.